Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Reinventing Mental Health, where we are looking at root causes for mental health and some ways that we can help people feel better naturally. Today, we have with us Lisa Wrights, and she is a grief coach. Is that how I understand it correctly?
Grief educator, yes.
Oh, all right. So, Lisa, tell us a little bit.
Sure. So I am a peer to peer grief educator. I work with individuals and with groups, educating about grief, different stages, and tips and ways to get through grief.
Okay.
And it's grief from all kinds of mental health issues, be it from death, from a divorce, from a loss of a job, a loss of a pet. There's so many ways that people are grieving. So that's who I work with.
So, what are some signs and symptoms that somebody may be dealing with grief following the death or loss?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that they're in grief. I think that's a part of society's problem. One thing I always talk about is, when somebody passes, we get our 3 days off from work and we all have to go back to work. And we're all expected to be where we are and work and be functioning. And that's it. We're supposed to get over whatever it was. But people don't understand that once your loss has happened and you get back to reality, that's when grief starts and people just don't realize it. Some of the early signs of knowing you're in grief, there's a lot of anger still going on. There's some battling, maybe some bargaining going back and forth within you and maybe your higher level or another person, or trying to bargain ways to bring that person back, or the what ifs. Depression is huge. If you find yourself feeling depressed, not wanting to get up, not wanting to do anything, those are all signs of early grief. Grief does last a long time and can last for some people forever. We just try to get everybody through it and get you through day by day and try and get you past some of those stages and into the acceptance where you can start to move on yourself.
In all of this, what you're talking about is I'm hearing some of the stages of grief that we go
Mhm.
through. As people are going through these stages of grief, I often get people that are saying, I shouldn't be so angry. What are some ways that people can help themselves to progress through those different stages?
Basically, one of the most common things through every phase or every stage that I work with my clients is journaling. Journaling is huge and it really helps people put their feelings out there. I use a lot of worksheets, questions on the worksheets to find out and have people answer why they're angry or what is it that's making them so angry as we try to work through a little bit of that. But honestly, I'm always telling people to journal. Journal is just such a big thing. It really helps people get their emotions out. Whether they keep the journals, throw the journals out, write on a piece of paper and throw it in the garbage, that's fine too. But just trying to get your inner feelings out, especially when you're angry.
Are there any signs besides anger inside of the body? Like sometimes I get people that I actually think their physical symptoms are actually because of grief that they haven't dealt with.
There are some physical symptoms. Obviously, we try to keep everything inside. You don't want to be showing that anger in a way that you're releasing, be it a fighting or some kind of a physical reaction to what you're doing, slamming walls, things like that. Those I look at as physical behaviors. With grief, mental health is just huge, and trying to get past everything and trying to settle yourself and come to some kind of acceptance with yourself and what's going on is really a big thing. Right now we're doing workshops. So I do a lot of workshops with with smaller groups. I don't like to do large groups. I like to do small groups, and we'll do workshops. And each week we'll talk about a different stage because everybody is at a different place when they're in grief. So, just trying to give some education about each of those. And again, using worksheets and journaling and just talking through. Sometimes just talking to somebody about, they could be in a very early stage of grief and they don't want to leave the house. They don't want to get up. They can't get out of bed. And talking to somebody the next week and finding out they got up and went for a walk is huge, just to get past one certain stage or moving into accepting and moving on with themselves.
So a lot of the work that you're talking about individuals and then you're talking about some small groups. And what about for communities that have dealt with a major loss? So we are in Central Texas, and
Okay.
this summer we had that flood that actually impacted Camp Mystic.
Right.
And there were many children's lives that were lost. And, in our community, we have multiple families that either knew people who were there.
Mhm.
How can a community come together and help a community heal after such an impact?
So a lot of times local churches will organize something. There's a lot of grief groups out there that are held, especially at churches or somewhere in your community centers where people will go and they can just talk out what's going on. Those are more like a grief support group where you can go and give out your feelings. I always advise people, if you know somebody or if you yourself have known somebody who passes and you don't know how to handle it with them, try to find a grief counselor or a grief educator, somebody more specific that can sit and work with you or your group. I'm sure if you reach out to any grief educator or grief counselor, they'll be happy to form some sort of a group, be it online or in your community, to sit and just give ideas of how to talk to people. Because a lot of people are just like, I don't know what to say to them. They lost their child, and what do I say? I just say, I'm sorry. And I feel silly saying, I'm sorry. Of course, we're sorry. But what do you say? And, I do encourage people. You do know families that are going through something. People are just looking for someone to sit and talk to. A lot of times they don't want to hear you saying things like, it's going to get better. You'll get past this. Those are not things people in grief want to hear. Maybe stop by and bring them lunch. Maybe just stop by, and if it's a friend of yours, just say, hey, how are you doing today? Let me stop by and we'll have a cup of coffee, or let's meet for a cup of coffee, and just let them talk to you and just nod your head. I understand. I can't imagine what you're going through, because there's really not a lot that they want to hear you say. They don't want to hear you say you're going to be okay. They will be at some point, but they're not going to be okay right now. And that's a lot of things that, in the workshops we talk about, is talking to others that, are going through grief, because people just don't know. It's just society is just not taught what you say. You go to a wake and you say, I'm so sorry for your loss. Then we walk away and we expect that person to move on with their life. But they might not be. They might just need somebody to listen.
Yeah. So you said through the course of this conversation that grief, and as far as like how long it takes for each person, can be really different. And there definitely are people that I feel like grief is going to be there forever. I cannot imagine, as a mother, something happening to one of my children. I believe that grief would definitely be with me for the rest of my life. How do parents that have lost a child help themselves with that type of grief?
So again, they definitely need to seek support and seek help. Grief is not something you can do by yourself. People think they can. You really can't. You just have to either go and find a local support group to talk to. Definitely be Googling for a counselor or for a grief educator. A lot of times people don't want to go to therapy, and I understand that. Therapists work on a different level. A lot of the grief educators that are out here in the country, again, we're working more on educating you, listening to you, meeting with you where you're at, and helping you with the needs that you need at this time. It's not so much therapy. And some people will get through each stage very quickly. And some people, like you said, they'll be in grief for the rest of their lives. We just try to talk to them. Again, getting to that acceptance stage is the hardest part. But once they do, talking about different ideas, how to celebrate that person, maybe celebrating their birthday, maybe celebrating their anniversary, always remembering the good things you've done. And that's the part you need to try to get people to, and educate them and try and move them forward to be able to move on. Yeah, I can't imagine something like that. I mean, people could be with prolonged grief disorder, which is something completely different that can last a really, really long time if you can't get to the acceptance stage. And people will get to the acceptance stage and still be in grief, and that's fine. They grieve maybe every year, or they grieve on their birthday, or they grieve on certain times of the year. The holidays are coming up. This is another difficult one. We'll be getting ready to run 2 holiday workshops to try and educate people on ways to get through and tricks to get through the holidays to help make it a little bit better.
So, what are some of those things that people can do to get through the holidays and to make things like this better for themselves?
So again, trying to get up in the morning, trying to
Mhm.
do something special for yourself. A lot of self care is very important for people. Make sure they're taking care of themselves, doing self care, journaling as much as you can is always something we talk about. So, those are some of the ways that you can try to help yourself through. Talking to a friend, trying to
Yeah.
make a plan. And maybe if there was a tradition you had with this person, maybe we would talk about a different tradition we could make or
Mhm.
start a new tradition to celebrate something. Different tasks like that to try and do.
Mhm. Because I specialize in kids, that's the age group that I'm working with.
Hmm.
So I will often talk to kids about having a picture of the
Hmm.
person that has passed so that they can continue having conversations with them.
Hmm.
And that for a lot of kids feels really good, just being able to continue having a relationship with this person, even though that they've passed. We've also done things like stepping stones where they've painted a stepping stone memorial and then planted a flower or a tree or something like that.
Hmm.
That is their kind of like closure and even a place that they can go back and memorialize,
Right.
this particular individual. Are there other physical things that you have noticed are helpful for people as far as having a physical thing to go to?
I have not been really working with children, so I've been working with adults most of the time. I also work a lot with divorced people. So getting through divorce through the holidays, which can be very difficult. But again, if you have children, just trying to maybe start a new tradition with your family. And obviously, it really depends on how that situation is with both parents, if they're talking, not talking, that kind of stuff. My book I just had published was about my personal journey through grief and divorce and being able to keep the family bonds together. So I do talk a lot about going through that grief process, especially with the children, and trying to keep the children as sound as possible and keeping both parents involved. And my ex and I have a great relationship now. We're both remarried and it's fine, but we go to functions together. Our kids think we're crazy. It's a good crazy. And for us, it worked. So I had a lot of tips and ideas about trying to keep the family together. So, same thing with the holidays. Just again, trying to be with the people that mean the most to you. Try not
Mhm.
to be alone for the holiday. Go to, if the person has a grave site, go to the grave site. Write a letter, leave a letter at the grave site. Definitely go and have a conversation. If you have children and it was a parent, bring the kids. I've told people on Mother's Day, Father's Day, depending on who's passed, bring a beach chair, go have a picnic by the gravesite, celebrate the holiday with that person who has passed. There's nothing wrong with that. People think, oh, you're supposed to just go there, bring flowers, and leave. But no, you can go. And if that makes you feel good, go and celebrate the time with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I also like that you just brought up the fact that there's a grieving process during divorce.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't talk about that and they don't see that as a grieving process.
Right.
So when people are going through divorce, does that look the same as if somebody just passed away? Or does it look a little bit different when you're
No,
grieving?
I think a lot of it looks the same because you go through that why me stage, what happened, you don't understand it. You move into bargaining, which is trying to maybe save your marriage, trying to bargain out anything you can do to keep things together, keep the family together. And when that doesn't work, you move into that anger stage. And that stage can last a long time. Unfortunately, for a lot of people that get separated or divorced, they're angry the rest of their lives and they can't get past it. And that's one of the things I really like to work with people and get them past that because you don't need to be angry your whole life. It's just not, that person's not worth it. It's not worth it, So that's where that part of the process changes because you're angry at that person and what they've done. And you still have your whole life to live. And it's hard, but you've got to learn to move on and move past that part of your life. So the anger stage can look a little bit more different because I think when it's death, you're looking at why. But with the anger stage, you're really angry at the opposite person most of the time.
Yeah, we see that with the kids, and the way that that impacts the children is that they're in the midst then of two people who are angry.
Right.
and they're being negatively impacted by that. And often the parent who's the most angry is taking it out on the children without realizing they're doing it.
Right. And I usually try to tell the parents not to do that. It's really important not to talk about the other person, because they might be going to that person's house and that person's talking about their mother, or they're with their mother and now they're talking about their father. And it's not fair to the children. It wasn't their fault. It has nothing to do with them. So you need to keep this between you and your ex, whether it's a relationship or a husband. You need a huge support system. That's the other thing with divorce. I do talk about a support system, because people need to let it out somewhere. Again, journaling, but they need a friend or somebody to go out with and just talk about what the crazy stuff that you want to say out loud to your kids that you can't. And then go home and parent your children. And co-parenting is huge. One of the things I talk about in my book, when my husband left, he came back the next day and he was sitting at the kitchen table. And the first thing he said to me was, "I know you're not going to let me see the kids." And my first thought was, you are right. Absolutely not. You're leaving us. You leaving what we made. You're not going to see these kids. Then I realized, after I got into some of my stages, that he wasn't leaving them. He was leaving me. So it was a me problem. It wasn't a them problem. Right. And I did find letting him have them gave me time to go do things for myself. It gave me time to find myself again, which was a huge part in the process, was rediscovering myself. So yeah, there's lots of tips and ways to get around certain things.
Yeah, and during a divorce, our children do still need both parents. Making sure that we support that so that our children know that they're loved by both people is so important. We see that with kids all the time.
And or do you want them playing one against the other? Because then that gets really hard too. So yeah, if the children need discipline, they need to know that both their parents are still disciplining them.
Yeah. I'm also divorced, but we're good with the co-parenting. If something happened, it was all four parents, because we both did also get remarried. It was all four parents that were coming to it and sitting down with them and being like, listen, this is not okay.
But yeah, I agree with you. Co-parenting is extremely important. And, like you said, you work with children, and it's huge for them to understand that it's not their fault, because it's really hard for them when they go through this whole thing.
And they definitely are experiencing grief when this is happening around them. Right. We have kids come into our office who are crying and they're upset because they just want mom and dad to get back together again, helping them come to the realization and acceptance of the fact that it isn't going to happen. And we've got to figure out how to cope with the situation that we have. Yeah.
What can we plan? What can we do? Trying to make it better.
Absolutely. What is the name of your book?
Navigating Grief and Divorce. It's my journey through divorce and keeping the family bonds together.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have journaling pages in there, and I have question pages in there for people, like, as they read each chapter and talk about. So I basically talk a little bit about the stage of grief, and then I talk about my story through that stage. And then I have questions, like almost like a little workbook for people to be able to fill out, and maybe navigate their own journey. And again, I say in the book, the journey may not end the way mine did, but I hope people find some inner peace, because you really need to try to step away from that anger and find some peace for yourself and rediscover yourself, because, you're a wonderful person, and, you deserve the best in life. So people have to understand that.
Absolutely.
Like you said, mass casualties, it's huge. And it does a lot with mental health and with the children, especially in today's world. It's very crazy out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. In the work that you've done, have you found a root as to why we started having this belief that we're supposed to get over it like this? Because I know when I read old books, they had morning periods, and they could be, for weeks or months where they're wearing black and they're not even coming out of the house. When did that change?
Yeah, I don't know when society changed, but my mom is Italian, and that was a huge tradition. They wore black for a year. I remember when my grandma died, we couldn't put lights on the house for Christmas. You just weren't allowed to do that. They had to have that year of mourning. But I don't think they were sad the whole time. I think they moved on, but it was just that this is what you were supposed to do.
Right.
And I think now society is so much faster now, and people are so much faster to do things. Women are working now, where way back in the day, a lot of women stayed home and had time to do that whole morning period. But, today in society, this is just the way we're taught. You get your time off, you go back to work, and you need to be fully functioning. In the workplace, people don't understand that, and that people are still grieving. And then people at work don't know how to speak to the people that are grieving because they just stay away from it, and we don't touch that situation. We don't touch the conversation, because once I say I'm sorry, if they were to start crying or they were to start saying, I don't know what to say.
All comfortable. Yeah.
People get very uncomfortable because we don't talk about it. Society doesn't talk about grief. Part of what I'm doing is I'm educating people on that whole grief process, and that you're allowed to grieve, and you're allowed to take as long as you want to grieve, and trying to help people talk to others. And hopefully we help people who maybe aren't grieving but don't know how to speak to people who are grieving learn how to speak to grievers. Yeah. I feel like we hear a lot more on TV about stages of grief. I guess maybe I just pay attention more now, and I'll hear like news people like, well, they're in the stage of grief or this stage of grief. And, I feel like maybe people are starting to learn a little bit. Yeah. I mean, when you have a mass shooting or a murder or killing on TV, the whole world can be grieving. We had one recently, and I mean, the whole world was grieving together.
Yes.
And yes, life will go on and everybody will do their thing, but everybody needs to be in that comfort with each other and understand that for some people, grief does take longer. And it's okay. And it's okay to not be okay.
Yep. Okay, so if our viewers want to reach out and they want to learn more, or maybe need your help with grief,
they can always go to my website, lisawritesgrief.com. I have all kinds of resources there. There's actually a couple of free ebooks. If they go to my resource page, they can grab a free ebook. I have free workshop pages on there they could download and work with. I have a schedule on there. They can book a free consultation, and we can talk for a little bit and find out if I am truly what they would need. If not, I would point them in the right direction. There's never pressure. I don't push anyone to talk about what they don't need to talk about. So I always like just to have a conversation and meet somebody and see if I can help them. And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all that under Angels Among Us. They'll find me. I think I sent you some links. So,
and I'll make sure that those get included when we do the broadcast.
So anywhere, find me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And for all of our viewers, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, and follow so you know when the next video is available.